I never believed that a single phone call could ruin someone's life, but everything I am about to tell you began with one impossible ringtone that still echoes in my skull like a living thing, and every time I close my eyes I feel that cold vibration moving through my bones the same way I felt it that night, the night when I received a call from room 403, a room that had been locked, abandoned, and officially sealed by the police for 12 years because of a murder-suicide so gruesome that even now the hotel staff refuses to speak about it, and yet I swear to you I got that call while standing alone behind the front desk of the Crestwood Grand Hotel on October 17th, at exactly 2:13 a.m. I had been working the night shift for only 3 months, and to be honest, I took the job because I needed something quiet, something boring, something where I could just drift through each shift half asleep, but the Crestwood was different, the kind of place where the hallways felt too narrow, where voices echoed long after the speaker had fallen silent, where you could hear footsteps from rooms that weren't occupied, and where every employee had at least one story they refused to finish telling. I thought all of that was just superstition or the kind of ghost lore people create to make a dull workplace interesting, but on the night it happened I was sitting at the desk fighting to stay awake, scrolling through my phone, half listening to the hum of the fluorescent lights when the landline next to me rang. The sound wasn't normal, it was deeper, slower, almost wet, like the phone was ringing underwater. I frowned because nobody calls the front desk at 2 in the morning except drunks needing a taxi or guests complaining about noise. I picked up the receiver, pressing it to my ear without even checking the caller ID, and said, "Front desk, how can I help you?" But the voice on the other end froze every muscle in my body. It wasn't a voice, at least not a human one. It was thin, stretch, trembling like it was forced out of a throat that no longer worked. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, old or young, all I heard was a whisper sliding across my eardrum like a razor. "He's awake," it breathed, followed by 3 slow, heavy knocks that sounded like they were coming from inside the phone itself. I felt something cold run down my spine, not fear, something deeper, like my body was reacting to a threat older than logic. Before I could respond, the line clicked dead. I pulled the phone away and stared at the receiver, my ears ringing so loudly it felt like the sound was leaking out of my skull. I finally looked at the caller ID. Room 403. At first I thought it had to be some glitch or prank because no one could call from that room. The entire floor above the 3rd had been closed off after the incident. The seal was still on the door. The electricity was disconnected. There was no phone service to that level. The handset in that room had been removed and stored in the basement. I stood up so fast my chair tipped backward, my breath stuttering in my chest. My first instinct was to call Marco, the senior night manager, a man who had worked at Crestwood for 9 years and knew its every shadow, but when I reached for my cell phone, the hotel landline rang again. Same distorted, drowning ringtone. Same slow vibration through the desk. I stared at it, terrified to touch it, but the ringing wouldn't stop, and something inside me, curiosity or stupidity, forced my hand toward the receiver. When I picked it up, there was someone breathing on the other end. Not normal breathing. It was like someone exhaling through a cracked jaw, like air pushing through broken bone. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice shaking. This time, a different whisper answered. A woman. A very soft, trembling, terrified woman. "Don't come upstairs," she said. Her voice sounded strangled, like she was whispering while someone held a hand over her mouth. "Please, don't open the door. He's standing right behind it." My legs nearly buckled. My skin felt as if cold fingers were pressing into the back of my neck. "Who is this?" I asked. But instead of answering, she began to sob, quietly, hopelessly, like she knew she was already dead. And then the line cut. Before I could even process the sound, another noise struck the air, this time not through the phone. This time from directly above me. A single, heavy, deliberate footstep. I looked up at the ceiling, my heart pounding so violently it hurt. Another step. Slow. Directly above the front desk. My breath caught. The front desk sits below room 303. Not 403. The fourth floor is completely closed. There should be no footsteps. No movement. No sound above me at all. I grabbed my flashlight and slowly backed away from the desk, staring at the ceiling as dust drifted down with each heavy step. I thought maybe someone had broken in, maybe a vagrant had bypassed security and climbed up the emergency stairwell, but the footsteps moved with purpose, like they were pacing. And then, they stopped. Silence. Complete. Dead. Silence. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until my lungs burned. I let the air out slowly, gripping the flashlight harder. And then the landline rang again. I spun so fast I nearly tripped. My hands shook as I picked up the receiver. I didn't say anything this time. I just pressed it to my ear. For a few seconds there was nothing but static, soft, distant, like wind whispering through a broken window. Then I heard something that made my vision blur with fear. It was a recording. A voicemail. My voice. Front desk, how can I help you? Except it wasn't from tonight. It was from what I had said earlier. Word for word. Then I heard the unnatural whisper reply, the same words I had heard just minutes ago. He's awake. The 3 knocks followed. But this time, I heard something new in the recording, something I hadn't heard before. After the 3rd knock, something whispered behind me. Not through the phone. Not in the recording. Directly behind me. He's watching you. The air turned ice cold. I felt a presence standing so close I could sense the heat, or the absence of heat, on my neck. My hand froze on the receiver. The light above me flickered. My throat locked. I forced myself to turn around, slowly, terrified of what I might see, but there was nothing there. Just the empty lobby. The empty hallway. The wide staircase leading to the upper floors. Everything still. Everything wrong. I lifted the phone back to my ear just in time to hear the voicemail end with a faint click. And then the caller ID changed. Room 403. Calling again. I couldn't breathe. The ringing started, but the sound was slower now, deeper, like the phone was dying. I reached out, my fingers trembling, when suddenly, the elevator dinged. A sound I will never forget. Because the elevator has been broken since September. We were waiting on a repair team. It cannot open. It cannot move. But it dinged. And then, it began to descend. Slowly. Groaning. Grinding. Coming down from the 4th floor. A floor that doesn't even have power. I stared at the elevator doors as they shook slightly with each floor they passed. My heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape. The landline continued to ring behind me. The elevator reached the 3rd floor. The lights in the lobby flickered again. The elevator reached the 2nd. I took a single step back. Then another. The elevator reached the 1st floor. The ringing stopped. The elevator doors slid open. And someone inside whispered, "Front desk," in the exact same voice as my recorded voicemail. But the elevator was empty. Completely empty. And yet the metal walls inside were fogged over, as if someone had been breathing heavily in the sealed box for hours. And then, slowly, one word appeared on the glass as if traced by an invisible finger, 403. A cold pressure pressed against my spine, and in that moment, I knew, something was trying to pull me upstairs. I don't know how I resisted. I don't know why I didn't move. Maybe my body froze to save me. Maybe something else stopped it. But the moment I blinked, the fog vanished. The writing disappeared. The elevator lights shut off. And the doors closed by themselves. The landline remained silent. But the worst part, the footsteps above me started again. Slowly. Deliberately. Walking toward the stairs. Walking down. Coming for me. That was the night everything began. And now I can't escape what's coming next. Not after the things I saw. Not after the things I heard. Not after realizing that someone, or something, trapped in room 403 knows my name, my voice, and exactly where I live. I didn't sleep the morning after it happened. In fact, I don't think I even blinked until the sun came up and spilled over the empty hotel parking lot like a warning, not a comfort, and when Marco arrived at 7 a.m. for shift turnover, he took one look at my face and asked if I'd seen something on the security cameras, but I couldn't even speak, couldn't even form the words, room 403, because saying it out loud made it too real, too close, like speaking the name would open a door I wasn't ready to see through. I just shook my head, numb, drained, and he clapped a hand on my shoulder like I was overreacting to a night shift hallucination, but I noticed something change in his expression when he walked behind the desk. His face tightened, his eyes flickered nervously toward the ceiling, and he muttered, "Not again," under his breath. I pretended I didn't hear him. He pretended he didn't say it. But the silence between us grew heavy, like the building itself was listening. I didn't tell him about the phone calls. I didn't tell him about the elevator. I didn't tell him about the footsteps because I wanted to convince myself that maybe it really was just a nightmare that felt real. But when I stepped outside into the cold morning air, the hotel looked different to me, warped somehow, like its windows were watching me leave, and the reflection in the glass, my own reflection, looked a fraction of a second delayed, as though it blinked after I did. Something inside me whispered that checking out, quitting, leaving wouldn't help. It would only make whatever this thing was follow me home, so instead of going to sleep like a normal person, I sat on my couch replaying every sound in my head until I realized the one thing I still hadn't explained: how could the elevator have moved if the power to the fourth floor was disconnected? By noon, exhaustion started clawing at the edges of my vision, but I couldn't rest. Something kept urging me to go back, to find the answer, to prove I wasn't losing my mind. So I returned to the hotel 3 hours early that evening, something I would soon regret more than anything, and slipped into the building through the employee entrance. The lobby felt colder than usual, as if the HVAC had been set to freezing, but when I checked the thermostat, it was turned off entirely. Marco wasn't there. No other staff member was in sight. The entire hotel felt abandoned. I walked behind the desk and looked at the security monitors, expecting static or darkness, but instead every camera feed showed something unsettling. The fourth-floor hallway lights were flickering. That was impossible. The fourth floor was cut off from the electrical grid of the building. Even the emergency lights had been disconnected years ago, after the incident. Yet there it was, camera 12, showing a long hallway lined with wallpaper peeling like old skin, the shadows stretching unnaturally far, and one flickering bulb at the very end of the hall illuminating the door to room 403. That door had police tape across it. I knew it did. But on the monitor, the tape was gone. And the door was open a crack. I stared at the screen so long my eyes watered. The camera feed didn't glitch. It didn't stutter. It stayed perfectly clear, as if something on that floor wanted to be seen. I whispered to myself, this can't be real, but the building felt like it was breathing around me, walls creaking slowly, faint echoes traveling through the vents like whispers pressing against my ears. I leaned closer to the monitor. The door to 403 moved. Not open, just a slight shift, like someone inside had brushed against it. I jerked away from the screen so hard my shoulder hit the desk. And then, as if responding to my movement, the landline on the desk lit up. It didn't ring. It just lit up. An incoming call. Caller ID, room 403. My throat closed. Sweat prickled along my back. The handset didn't even vibrate, it just glowed silently, like it was waiting for me to make the next move. I refused to touch it. Not again. Not after last night. But the longer I stared, the brighter the light seemed to get, almost pulsing like a heartbeat. Then, as if sensing my hesitation, the call transferred to the phone sitting at the other end of the lobby, the courtesy phone near the elevator. Its light blinked. Then the housekeeping phone near the hallway entrance lit up. Then the maintenance phone. Then the office phone. One by one each phone in the lobby flickered on with the same silent incoming call. Room 403. Every phone in the lobby was ringing without sound. Calling me. Surrounding me. Hurting me. I backed toward the front door, but right as I reached for the handle the lobby lights flickered violently, buzzing like insects trapped inside glass, and then died, plunging everything into darkness except the faint glow of the phones. A cold draft swept across the lobby, and for a moment I could swear I heard breathing coming from the staircase leading to the upper floors. Slow. Wet. Ragged. I didn't think, I ran. Not out of the hotel, not to safety. I ran behind the desk and ripped the power cord out of the landline. The light went out. Every other phone instantly shut off too. The lobby fell silent. Completely. Utterly. Silent. I stood there shaking, gripping the dead phone wire like it was a lifeline. I don't know how long I stood like that. Maybe seconds. Maybe minutes. But eventually the lights flicked back on. All at once. Normal. Warm. Quiet. Too quiet. I looked at the security monitors again. The fourth floor camera was dark now, nothing but black. No flickering. No light. No open door. Just emptiness, like it had never been on in the first place. I leaned closer to the screen. Static suddenly burst across camera 12. My heart lurched. And then, just for a moment, less than a second, an image appeared too fast for my brain to fully process. A face. A white, wide-eyed, slack-mouthed face filling the entire camera, as if someone had pressed their head against the lens. The eyes were wrong, too dark, too hollow, too deep, as though someone had scooped out everything behind them, leaving only a vast black space. The mouth hung open slightly, just enough for me to see cracked teeth and something moving behind them, like a small hand pushing out from the throat. Then the image vanished. The monitor went black again. I stumbled back, choking on a scream I didn't release. And then the elevator dinged. The same dead elevator that hadn't worked for months. The doors slid open slowly, with a long metallic groan like the machine was waking up after a long sleep, and for the second time, no one was inside. But the temperature dropped instantly as if something cold and invisible stepped out. The lights inside the elevator flickered. The floor number panel glitched, cycling through numbers impossibly, 1, 3, 4, 8, 2, 4, 4, 4, 403. I didn't even know the display could show a 3-digit number. But it did. It showed 403. And then, from deep inside the elevator shaft, a voice drifted out. Soft. Slow. Whispering my name. My real name. A voice I didn't recognize. A voice I know I've never heard before. Come upstairs. My stomach dropped. My vision blurred with fear. I stepped back instinctively. The elevator doors closed. But not before I saw something, just a glimpse, reflected in the metal surface, a tall, thin silhouette standing behind me. When I spun around, no one was there. No one. But the afterimage burned into my eyes like it had seared itself into my brain. I was done. I was ready to quit, ready to run, ready to burn the whole building down just to erase the memory of that face on the monitor. But when I turned to grab my bag, I froze. Someone had left a note on the front desk. A slip of old yellow paper curled at the edges. I didn't hear anyone place it there. The handwriting was shaky, jagged, written so hard the pen nearly tore the paper. 3 words, "Don't look back." Right as I finished reading it, something tapped me on the shoulder. I spun around so fast my legs almost gave way, but there was nothing, just the empty lobby, the desk, the flickering fluorescent lights, the faint hum of the air vents, but the feeling was still there, like someone had pressed a hand against my spine and left it there, icy and heavy, and I could feel my heartbeat hammering in my throat, every nerve screaming at me to run but also warning me that if I moved too fast I might see it, whatever it was, and then I would be trapped with it forever. Because I now understood one terrifying fact: room 403 wasn't just a room, it was a living thing, and it knew I was awake, it knew I was alive, and somehow it was reaching for me, even from the sealed, abandoned floor, even from behind walls where no human could stand, even from inside phones that were supposed to be dead, and I could feel it watching me from every shadow, every corner, every reflective surface, every monitor screen, and I didn't know if my mind was breaking or if reality itself had fractured in the hotel, because suddenly the air felt thicker, heavier, and I realized the hairs on the back of my neck were standing as if something unseen was crawling along my skin. I backed away from the desk and toward the staircase, planning to flee, but the moment I stepped onto the first stair, a low, wet, dragging sound began above me, somewhere on the 4th floor, rhythmic, deliberate, like something was pacing, and it grew louder with every heartbeat, echoing through the building so loudly it felt like the walls themselves were vibrating, and I froze, clinging to the railing, eyes darting to the shadows, unable to tell if what I was hearing was real or some perverse hallucination. And then came the whisper, just beyond comprehension, just barely audible over the dragging, a voice so faint it felt like it had crawled through the walls itself and pressed into my ear. "I see you," it hissed, and my stomach dropped so violently I nearly fell. My legs refused to carry me, and my instincts screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't respond. It was paralyzed with a mixture of terror and disbelief, and in that moment I understood that I was no longer a visitor, no longer a guest. I had become prey, and the building itself, the cursed floor, the abandoned room, and whatever dwelled within were aware of me. And then the lights flickered violently, casting every shadow in the lobby into grotesque, shifting shapes. Walls bending, corners elongating, and I swear I saw something move at the very edge of my vision, a tall, thin figure stepping from shadow to shadow, impossibly pale, impossibly long-limbed, its head cocked sideways at an unnatural angle, black eyes reflecting the failing light, and I felt it watching me, studying me, like a predator selecting the precise moment to strike, and my legs finally obeyed my brain and I ran, running up the stairs 2 at a time, heart threatening to explode in my chest, lungs burning, hands gripping the railing as the dragging sound grew closer, louder, matching the rhythm of my pulse. But I didn't dare look back, because something in my gut screamed that if I saw it, if I met its gaze, would be gone, swallowed into whatever nightmare reality had spilled into this hotel. And when I reached the 4th floor landing, I finally stopped to catch my breath, leaning against the cold metal railing outside the sealed-off corridor, staring at the cracked, peeling wallpaper, and the door of room 403 was slightly ajar, exactly as I remembered from the monitor, and I swear to you it moved slightly when I exhaled, like it was breathing, like the room itself was alive and aware of my presence, and my hand moved of its own accord toward the doorknob, trembling, sweating, because even though every instinct told me to run, to leave, to never return, a darker part of me wanted to see what was inside, wanted to confront the thing that had been calling me, wanted to know what it was that knew my name, my voice, my fear. And as I grasped the cold, rusted knob, I felt it twitch in my hand, almost like a pulse, and I couldn't explain it, couldn't rationalize it, because nothing rational could explain the sudden sharp exhale, the whisper in my ear, the low, wet dragging sound coming from inside the walls. And then the lights in the hallway went out completely, leaving me in total darkness, and I felt it behind the door before I opened it, presence pressing against my body, making my legs buckle, and for a moment I thought I had imagined it, that exhaustion and terror were finally colliding into hallucinations. But then I heard it, breathing. Slow, wet, deliberate, right behind the door, moving closer, something exhaling with a force that seemed designed to push me back, and I forced my eyes to focus on the darkness, and there it was, just a glimpse at first, a shadow curling in the corner of the room, moving slightly, and then I saw the eyes, black holes, deep and endless, reflecting nothing, absorbing everything, staring straight into me. And I felt a scream rise in my throat but couldn't release it because my mouth felt like it had been sewn shut by invisible threads, and then the phone rang. The room's phone, the one that shouldn't even exist, rang. The sound wasn't normal. It was slow, wet, distorted, more like a heartbeat than a ring, and every fiber of my body screamed at me not to pick it up, not to touch it, not to listen, but I did. I lifted the receiver, and the whisper came again, closer this time, almost tangible, a voice from inside my skull, inside my chest, somewhere I didn't know existed. "You came back." The words were followed by a wet, dragging sound across the floor, closer, faster, echoing around me, and I swear I felt the presence shift behind me, moving through the walls. Pressing against me, almost brushing my skin without contact, and then the lights flickered once, twice, and the shadow, whatever it was, lunged, but I couldn't see it fully, only glimpses of elongated limbs, pale skin, teeth sharp and thin, and eyes so black they consumed the air around them, and I stumbled back, smashing the phone to the floor, wires sparking. The sound of shattering plastic mixing with the dragging and whispering and my own panicked breathing, and I ran. I ran without thinking, running down the stairs, across the lobby, into the freezing night air, lungs on fire, heart hammering, back slamming against walls, barely noticing that the front doors had locked behind me, and as I stumbled into the parking lot, car keys in shaking hands, I looked back at the hotel one last time, and through the tinted windows of the lobby, I saw movement, long, thin shadows moving along the hallways, doors opening and closing, lights flickering, and then one figure appeared at the fourth-floor window, staring straight at me, head tilted, mouth hanging slightly open, eyes black holes, and I knew then that it wasn't just the room or the hotel. It had followed me, watched me, learned me, and as I turned my car over, my hands shaking, every instinct screaming, I felt a chill run down my spine, a whisper brush my ear from nowhere, "Impossible but undeniable, we're not done." And I knew with absolute certainty that I hadn't left yet, not really, because the moment I blinked, the shadows and the whisper and the room itself would be waiting, patient, hungry, awake, and I had just begun a nightmare I might never escape. I drove through the night, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, staring at every shadow along the roadside, every flicker of light in the trees, knowing without knowing how that it was following me, that whatever had been in room 403 wasn't confined to that hotel anymore and that my life had irrevocably changed, and no matter how fast I drove, no matter how far I went, every instinct told me that the darkness, the whisper, the dragging presence had found a way out, had learned my routines, my fears, my patterns, and I couldn't escape it, not from the rearview mirror that reflected long, distorted shadows, not from the trees swaying as if pushed by invisible hands, not from the occasional distant phone vibration that I felt in my pocket even though my phone was off, and by 2:13 a.m., exactly 24 hours after the first call, I pulled over to a deserted gas station, trembling, trying to think, trying to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, sleep or sanity would save me, but the moment I stepped out of the car, the air changed, the wind stopped, the radio in my car went silent, and a single, heavy exhale brushed my neck as if someone was standing just behind me, though when I spun around there was no one, only the long, dark highway stretching into nothingness, and then the phone in my pocket vibrated violently despite being powered off, and I heard it, my own voice, faint, warped, whispering my name, repeating, "He's awake, he's awake, he's awake," and I realized with absolute, terrifying clarity that the calls, the shadow, the room itself had somehow attached itself to me, following me, observing me, feeding on my fear, and I ran back to my car, slamming the door, fumbling with the ignition as the vibration intensified, and through the windshield, I saw a figure emerge from the darkness, impossibly tall, impossibly thin, moving silently across the asphalt, head tilted sideways like a broken doll, eyes black voids, mouth hanging open as if it were screaming silently, and I floored the accelerator, tires squealing against the wet road, heart pounding as the figure kept pace without running, gliding, never losing ground, and every time I glanced in the rearview mirror it seemed closer, smaller at first but then towering again, bending the darkness around it, absorbing it, As though the night itself had been swallowed into its being, and I drove for hours. Blindly, reckless, knowing I couldn't stop, knowing I couldn't escape, only to arrive at an empty motel in the middle of nowhere, lit by a single flickering neon sign, the kind of place that looks abandoned but isn't, and I collapsed inside the room, door locked, bolts secured, lights on, praying that walls and metal and wood could keep it out, but I knew it wouldn't, and as I sat there shaking, the phone on the bedside table lit up, glowing, displaying a single message, room 403, and my chest froze as the same wet, dragging sound began at the ceiling, above the room, slow, deliberate, circling, and then the whisper, faint but unmistakable, came from everywhere at once, "You can't hide. We know you. We've always known you," and then the reflection in the mirror caught my eye, not my own reflection, but the twisted face, the long limbs, the tilted head, the eyes, deep, hollow, unblinking, staring at me from inside my own room, my own apartment suddenly replaced by that motel room, the shadow moving closer, closer with every breath, and I realized I could no longer distinguish between reality and nightmare, that the calls, the room, the shadow had merged with the air I breathed, the walls I leaned against, that there was no safe space, no sanctuary, and then the landline rang again, slow, distorted, insistent, vibrating the room as if the air itself were alive, and I didn't pick it up because I knew what would happen. I knew the whispering voice would reach inside my mind, inside my chest, inside my bones, but it didn't stop, it only intensified, and I heard it clearly this time, close, right in my ear, the words etched in terror itself, "You saw me. Now we wait," and I sank to the floor, shivering, praying for the night to end, for sleep to save me, but I knew it never would, that room 403 had followed me, had merged with my existence, that whatever had killed, whatever had whispered, whatever had dragged along those old floors, was no longer confined to a building, was no longer constrained by walls, floors, or doors, and that the thing that called itself by my name, that spoke in my voice, that moved in shadows and monitors and elevators and phones, had become eternal, endless, patient, and hungry, and as I sat in that room, paralyzed, sweat and tears mixing on my face, I understood the final truth. I had looked into room 403, I had answered the call, I had survived the first night, and that was the mistake, the invitation, the moment it chose me, and I knew from that second forward, every time the phone rings, every shadow stretches too far, every breeze carries a whisper, that it would be with me forever, waiting, always waiting, and even now as I write this, somewhere in the distance I hear a faint, wet, dragging sound, and the phone beside me vibrates, displaying a number I know by heart, room 403, and the whisper curls around my skull, "We see you. Always." Thank you so much for watching the entire video. And to get more videos like this, please like and subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon beside it. Thank you.